Hello, so we've been asked to record a video about the word millennials. We've had a little chat about it, we've got a bit of a perspective, and it seems that to us the word millennial is a bit weird, and maybe it's less about an age group and more about a mindset. We'll get onto that in a second, but first I just want to ask you, Jim, what do you think of the word millennial? What's your vibe?
Firstly, I think it's an absurd concept. The fact that if we define millennials as anyone born between 1982 and 2004.
So anyone born after Michael Jackson recorded Off the Wall is a millennial.
It's 2 billion people. Like how can we categorize that amount of people with like a specific set of behaviors and values? Like it's just impossible. So I think when people talk about millennials, like positively or negatively, they're actually talking about a group of affluent, probably middle class, probably university educated, probably Western or people from affluent countries. Like that's what they're talking about. We're not talking about.
There's definitely a middle class context to the word millennial. It seems to not just be an age group. The other thing I've noticed that when people use the word millennial, it's derogatory. Most of the time it's derogatory. It's like, oh, those millennials are thinking like that. So first of all, I think that comes from a desire from marketeers to segment humans. And I also think it's slightly dangerous and maybe not very nice to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's often, and these terms are often used when people are scared about something or don't understand something or want to seek to kind of control it or remove it from their.
So that idea of them not understanding them not understanding each other, that's interesting. But I think that's maybe the thing to go to is we have people who are from different worlds. So we spoke a little bit about those different worlds. I think something for us to say or agree on is that we are all inheriting previous generations' stuff. Every generation has inherited a previous generation's stuff.
The world we're in is the one that our parents created.
Exactly, right? And the world they were in was the one their parents created. And so I think an acceptance of legacy is important in this conversation. But I think what's maybe worth saying is that maybe the world we live in feels more different than the previous generations for a number of reasons, and that is why we're seeing this divide in the way people are behaving and thinking, perhaps.
Yeah, so classically, like, millennials are people who were born after the kind of mass adoption of technology, of digital technologies and the internet. So I think, like, I was born in 84, like, I grew up with a PC, chatting with my mates on MSN Messenger after school, like being on MySpace, digital cameras, all that stuff. It's like that's why these facts about like millennials are far more prone to using technology. And like, of course, they are.
It's there.
Of course they are. It's like saying like people born after 1920 are more prone to reading books,
to having a microwave.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's just like
it makes no sense. So I think we have a few points as to what that world might be like that we wanted to talk you through. First, I just want to make a little note on this famous Simon Sinek video that went round, and I've come to call him Simon Cynical. Like I found it an incredibly patronizing and annoying video, mainly because he seems to just like cluster everyone in this group and make fun and like be jokey about something that's maybe not that funny to a lot of people, and use like really gross generalizations.
Like he says millennials are incapable of loving.
Yeah. You basically get the vibe that he's saying that creating relationships is really difficult because it requires patience and love. And I mean, I just don't identify with that. I have loads of deep relationships. I also have relationships with people from far more diverse places than I think previous generations could have had, because I'm lucky enough to have been brought up with the internet. So I think it's like really worth being careful of like someone who is charismatic versus someone who has like actual content to deliver, because I think it was a gross and dangerous simplification. What is worth discussing is these two worlds. So the first point I wanted to discuss is the fact that the world is like overpopulated, some say, but it's certainly highly populated. And not only is it highly populated, but it's highly populated by people who are interconnected with one another. So you have more and more people connected with more and more people more and more often. from more and more places. And if you multiply those by each other, of course, you have a world that feels messy because there's like compounding effects of noise, basically. So that is a very different world. The last point on that is that we're probably the first generation where air travel is a cheap thing. Like the idea that I can jump on EasyJet around Europe is a big part of my life. So do that plus the internet. And of course, we end up with this idea of global citizenry or whatever.
The world's smaller. The world's literally smaller. Like it's as easy for me to find out what's happening in like Melbourne as it is to find out what's happening in Hamburg, like a few hundred kilometers away. And that's unique. I remember my dad always says, like, when he grew up in like a working class family in the Midlands in the UK, he just never even contemplated getting like traveling anywhere, or that he wasn't going to get a job straight after high school. Like it just didn't enter his like realm of possibility. But now, growing up in like today's interconnected world, like it's not just a possibility, it's almost like essential that you pursue that.
And so there's so therefore we have a different idea of location maybe as millennials. And I think as millennials we do. And I think that is what's bringing along a load of different values. So I saw this thing with Nigel Farage recently where he said that there's a growth in nationalism. So I mean, for a load of reasons,
a right-wing
British politician, and for lots of reasons, I think he's like wrong. I think that's an easy symptom to jump on, and it meets his ideology, so it's an easy one for him to jump on. But also millennials didn't vote in both the US and UK referendum. So that's really interesting, because then the idea of nationalism isn't counted upon if we didn't hear the voice of that group of people. And I certainly don't think it is true amongst people of our generation. Because of this interconnected world, I would say there's less idea of nationalism.
Yeah, like millennials are generally less religious as well, less connected to place, certainly less nationalistic, less tied to a specific career path classically. Like it's...
And I did a DNA test recently which showed that I was from a load of different countries. So I think there's something happening there in this idea of interconnection. The second point is that millennials were the first generation who grew up knowing that the planet is getting hotter and hotter at a more and more dangerous rate. Like we were born into the world knowing that like it's kind of fucked environmentally. Like that's a given.
Yeah, what does that do to you?
I mean, for me, I hope that I'm being more conscious environmentally. I try and be careful about where I buy things from. I'm far from perfect. I try and like offset carbon emissions, things like that. But like it's a struggle. So then we hear about millennials being like purposeful and like naive and stuff, and I'm like, well, if you were brought up in a world where you knew that it was going to die,
what's the alternative?
Right? Totally.
Yeah, let's all just like not try and make the world a better place.
Of course.
That's the solution.
So again, this isn't like this is just being brought into a different world, and it's happened every single generation. It's just that we're being asked to talk about this specific generation. Then I think economic booms and busts have sped up. So they, I don't know if they're more intense, probably not. I think they don't last for as long, but they are more frequent in the way that they occur. And there's one school of thought to say that is because of the fact that things are interconnected, because there's this compound effect. Things move faster and faster and die faster and faster. So if you're brought into that world, you're going to go, like, stability isn't a thing that you can have like previous generations could perhaps have.
Job, house.
That doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So then I think you have a group of people going, well, this just like doesn't work. Basically, I mean, it like obviously doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think like the idea of pensions is emblematic of that. That nobody who is a millennial like me that I know is even thinking about having a pension or putting money aside for a pension.
Previous generations at our age would have been on pensions.
All about pensions and getting a house and a mortgage, but like I don't know what life's going to look like in 6 months, let alone 60 years. Like how can I possibly plan for that?
Yeah. And so this notion, I think we are in a world which is moving faster and faster. There's this notion of circularity which makes things compound in these ways, but the underlying social structures are the same. We have centralized governments, centralized banks, etc. So what I think's happening is that all of this information and data that's moving around the world, our old systems can't cope with that. They're like bursting at the seams. And therefore you have a generation of people who goes like, this can't cope with this, so I'm going to do things my own way. And that's the division that we're seeing in terms of these mindsets, I think, basically. It's like a generation who's brought up assuming these structures as like truths and not questioning them, and a generation going like, it just doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah, I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah. So I think that's the main difference that we see. Maybe just to finish off with a piece of advice, is I think it's important for both millennials and non-millennials to just understand this notion that when we come from different generations, we struggle to adopt the perspective of that other generation. So as a millennial, I think I need to get better at understanding that often the generations I'm working with and speaking with and that I consult in organizations don't understand my perspective, and actually I don't understand theirs. And empathy is the only thing that can really help us to take that other perspective and make the most of it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Those are some opinions.
Those are some opinions.
Have
your own as well.
Yes.
Comment on the video if you've got them.
Please. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Speak soon. Bye.